Alright, so another question. This guy asked me a question, can you do a movie review on Terminator and Terminator 2? And he says, does the gun replace the martial artist in movie films? And he says Arnold is known for the guns and the muscles. Now, basically, Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, as in all action movies, I'm not into that stuff. I mean, I've watched it, but I'm not into action movies. Really, I'm not. And what they call martial arts in America is not really martial arts, so they don't really make martial art movies in America. And even China, they don't really come out with that many quality videos. But like true martial art movies to me are like movies like Fearless is a true martial arts movie. Hero is a true martial arts movie. House of Flying Daggers is a true martial arts movie. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is a true martial arts movie. I'd say even Matrix, in a way, is a little bit of martial arts, a little bit. I say that it's martial arts because of the meaning behind the movie. It's significant. It's not just action. So those are the types of movies that I would say would be true martial arts movies. But everything else, like all the action movies, all the Schwarzenegger movies are not. They're just action movies. All Sylvester Stallone movies are all action movies. Bruce Willis movies are action movies. Matt Damon movies are, action movies. In order to have a martial arts movie, there has to be a martial artist starring in the movie. Like Bruce Lee Enter the Dragon, that's a martial arts movie, clearly. All of Bruce Lee's movies are martial art movies. You need, like Tony Jaa's movies, Onbot 1, 2, and 3, and Protector. Those are all martial art movies. You need a martial artist as a leading role to make a martial arts movie. As far as Jackie Chan is concerned, his is more like comedy. Comedy and, I'm trying to think of it. I don't really consider many of, comedy action is Jackie Chan, in my eyes. Some of his movies might be martial arts, but I can't even really think of one movie from Jackie Chan that I really even enjoyed where I would consider it a martial arts movie. It's more like action comedy. That's Jackie Chan. But clearly, Jet Li has made some really good martial art movies, and even like Once Upon a Time in China 1, 2, and 3. Even though I'm not into those movies, that may be pretty much considered a martial arts movie. Jet Li, Tony Jaa, Bruce Lee, martial art movies. That's what they come up with. But there's no way that Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, Sylvester Stallone, Matt Damon, or Keanu Reeves, none of them can really make martial art movies. Because they don't have that artisticness as a background. They're not martial artists. So I don't care for action movies. I don't like them. Because there's just no point in them. There's just, like even Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, would say, I don't want to be in a fighting movie where you're just exploding things. There has to be some meaning behind what you're doing. I mean, it's just exploding things and fighting. I mean, that's just something. I'm not into that. I'm more into like movies that have deep meaning. That's what I'm into. So I can't really give a movie review on Terminator 1 and 2 because I just don't care for it, As far as, does the gun replace the martial arts artists in the movies? Yes, it does. I mean, when you talk about modern movies, you talk about modern technology. When there's modern technology, that it makes less and less chance of like a real reason of why people would even fight without weapons. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, even Bruce Lee knew this, when he was making movies. Before he died, he mentioned, this martial art thing it's just gonna be like a phase. It's gonna be like more of a fad. Like, eventually, he's planning out that he's gonna have to make different movies that didn't have anything to do with fighting because basically there's there's gonna be less and less like ability to give a reason of why people are fighting without weapons. You know, I mean, in modern day, I mean, really, it's like imagine having a modern day movie without cars. I mean, how could you do that? I mean, everywhere there's cars. How could you have a modern day movie without computers? Or a modern day movie without cell phones? Or a modern day movie without guns? I mean, guns, cell phones, cars, airplanes. I mean, they're a part of this modern world. So you can't have a modern movie without that type of technology. You know, it's like having a modern scary movie, and then the person is like so freaked out, but then they're like, they don't have a phone to call the police. It's like, how could you not have a phone? Everybody has a cell phone. When you don't have a cell phone, you know, it's just like stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, that's why like martial art movies like Hero and Fearless, House of Flying Daggers, they all take place like back in ancient times when there weren't any cars, so they had to ride horses. And even back then, when they're riding horses, they had other weapons at their disposal. They were using swords and bow and arrows and all that stuff. So that had to be integrated into the movie because that's what was real at that time. You know, same thing with a movie like Gladiator, for example, to me is like a martial arts movie. That was a great movie. And that movie, there's no cars, but they're gladiators and they got weapons still. So they were using weapons throughout the entire movie because that's what was real for that time. You know, it's gonna be hard to even imagine a time where weapons are not used. Even in Bruce Lee's movies, he was using weapons too. You know, because that's what's real. I mean, that's what's out there in the real world are weapons. You know, and the way Bruce Lee got away without using weapons is because his movies were produced in China. And back in that time, weapons weren't really a big thing. I mean, back then, I'm not even sure if they even had semi-automatics yet. They might have just only had revolvers. And back then, you know, I mean, in China, in that country, especially back then, it's a poor country. So if you got a poor country, how are they going to really have that much money for guns and weapons? So there's not that much, it's not as likely to find a gun in China back then than it is to find a gun in America right now, because, you know, America has so much money, there's going to be weapons everywhere. You know, like, even in China, you know, they don't have that much money there, so back then you won't even see that many cars, you know. So it's just like going to China and then you don't see any mansions because they're so poor. There's no mansions there. There's no guns. There's no cars. So it makes sense of where you make a movie where there's a lot of fighting involved with no weapons. And if there are weapons, there's sticks, there's knives, there's nunchucks, but there's no guns. So his movies kind of make sense because it's coming from that time. And even the modern movie that he made before he died, it was the modern movie he made before he died, Enter the Dragon. You know, he was talking with that guy about, you know, the tournament in Han's Island, and the guy specifically said, you know, Han hates guns and he doesn't allow guns on his island at all. And then Bruce Lee was asking him, like, how come we can't just bring guns and just take care of business? The guy's like, Han doesn't allow guns, so we need you to go over there to, you know, to infiltrate his island and basically find out what's going on over there. So it provided the reason of why there's no guns on that island. They already answered that question immediately from the beginning to give a reason as to why, you know, people had to fight in this way on that island, because there are no guns. You know, so, but the more and more, you know, the more modern things become in the movies, the less reasons you're going to be able to come up with, justifiable reasons that you're going to be able to come up with to even fight without weapons. You know, why even bother boxing and kicking or kickboxing with somebody or grappling with somebody when you could just shoot them? You know, it just does not make sense. You know, it's like, and some of these movies also do it too. Like, some of them might even act as if the law doesn't exist. You know, like, you could just go kill like 100 people and then go on about your day like nothing happened. I mean, that's not real. I mean, the reality is as soon as you kill somebody, the police are going to start looking for you. And they're going to try to figure out what the hell, you know, they're going to try to lock you up for killing all these people. You know what I mean? Like movies like Enemy of the State, for example, with Will Smith. Like, I like that movie, for example. It's not a martial art movie, but an action movie. But it's a very realistic action movie because it's showing, like, hey, you know, these government officials, they're tracking everything you do, and they're chasing after you, and they're trying to kill you. They got guns, and, you know, a bunch of people are running after you with guns trying to kill you. That's realistic. You know what I'm saying? Like, from modern time. Because it's even taking you further into the future and, like, showing you how your life could be monitored and tracked in all these various different ways, you know. And you could actually see that happening right now, like how, you know, they're going to put tracking devices in our shoes. They're going to have tracking devices and see everywhere you are. When you're driving, there's going to be a camera on you at all times. They're going to see where you are. There's going to be a camera that watches you walk into your home. I mean, there's like, the technology is like getting to the point where they're tracking every little thing that we do, and we see it happening. Our cell phones are like tracking devices. You know what I'm saying? So, like, these are like modern day movies, and really martial arts, the artfulness of it is dead. I mean, especially in film. I mean, not just especially in film, but martial arts, the artfulness of it is dead as far as mass media is concerned. Unless you go to YouTube or something underground where people are expressing the martial arts in their basement, in their home, and outside, making their own creative videos expressing martial arts. That's the only real martial arts you can really be exposed to in mass media, you know. But Hollywood is not going to give you real martial arts because it's not even relevant for today's time. You know, I mean, just think about, like, real art is like somebody who could draw, like, really well, which is not that many people in this world. And then you compare that to everybody that could take a picture. I mean, everybody has this phone that could take, like, perfect pictures, digital pictures, like 20 megapixel pictures that are, like, perfect. Nobody even needs to draw anymore. They're just taking pictures. But the art is in the drawing, that it might take you 20 hours to draw somebody's face. It's not practical, but it's an art, you know, and not that many people practice that art. But millions and billions of people just take pictures. I mean, that's what everybody does. And that's what's going on out here in this world, is that everybody's using guns. Who practices martial arts anymore? Not many people, because it's not practical for modern time. So these action movies are revolved around the guns because that's what's practical and real for modern times. The only way that you're going to really... Even the movie Last Samurai took back in ancient times before the big influx of weapons, and even they were using a bunch of weapons. I mean, they had swords and all this other stuff. You know, so even the samurai were using weapons. I mean, to really go back in time where there really are no weapons at all, you really have to go back really, really far. But even if you go back really, really far, back to the gladiator times, they were using weapons there too. I mean, weapons have just always been a part of our lives. So you can't really, like, you can't really express martial arts without weapons. I mean, weapons is a part of it. You know, and it's just that the gun, specifically the gun, makes it completely, like, irrelevant. Because the bow and arrow still requires, like, skill and development. The swords still require skill and development. The staff still requires skill and development. Every other weapon requires skill and development except for the gun. the gun is just like anybody could do it. And that pretty much made the rest of everything else like irrelevant, impractical. And it just is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like comparing the horseback riding to like driving a car. It's like everybody's driving cars out there. You don't see anybody horseback riding. And if they do horseback ride, it's gonna be like in remote areas where it's just for like pleasure. It's not, you know, pleasure and play. It's not for like, oh, you know, I gotta ride my horse to work today, or I gotta ride my horse to get some groceries. No, I mean, you're not even allowed to do that. I mean, you can't do that. I mean, the whole society, the whole modern society is just overtaken by cars and vehicles. You know, and then the next, you know, then, you know, maybe the bike would be the closest to like between a horse and a car would be the bicycle. You know, and then that would be like in between. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of like a samurai who has a sword, but he doesn't have a gun, but he has a sword. You know, and the horseback riding is like just no weapons. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so basically action movies is what Hollywood promotes. Hollywood, it'd almost be impossible for Hollywood to create a martial art movie. They don't even understand what martial art is. Like, I think the closest martial art movies that Hollywood has ever created, I would say, would be The Matrix. And that's only because the directors, I believe, have a strong, like, interest in the Eastern ways. And that's the only reason why The Matrix is probably the only martial art movie to be created in America. Well, maybe I can't say that because Enter the Dragon was a martial art movie too, and that was created in America too. So I'd say like in America it would be like Enter the Dragon and Matrix, but I can't even really think of. Well, when I think about it even more, you got Gladiator. I consider that like a martial art movie. You got Gladiator, you got Matrix, you got Enter the Dragon. All right, there's not that many more. Okay, Hollywood just doesn't really understand martial arts to where they can even express it on film, you know. But I can't, you know. But even in China, they're not even really making martial art movies either, because China's becoming more modernized like America. They're coming out with garbage movies just like America is. Now, Tony Jaa comes from Thailand, and Thailand is more of a poor country, and because of that, he's coming out with more martial art movies because his movies are like more based around a poor culture. Like these people are so poor that they can't even afford to have guns. So that's why martial arts becomes relevant in that country, because people don't have money to have guns. So you're living in a poor country, and that's how they fight. They don't fight with guns because they don't have any. You know, and you know it makes sense because Thailand is like trying to build up to become like something like America or even China, but they're still not there yet. And that's why it makes more sense of why his movies don't really incorporate that many weapons, because they're a poor country. You know, but even in China, they're becoming more rich, so you can't really create that many movies that make it even relevant for unarmed combat, because they have weapons, a lot of weapons too. America has the most weapons out of everybody, so there's really almost like there'd be no sense in them ever making a movie where there's no weapons in the movie, because America's full of weapons. You know, it's like trying to find a country where there's no cars. Like if you could find a country where there's no cars, then there's a good likelihood that they don't have guns either, and they don't have like computers. So then to make a movie over there where there's really no guns, it'd make more sense to make a movie where they're fighting and there's no weapons involved. You know, but even Africa, they're really poor, but then even those African rebels they're like loaded up with firearms. I mean, they're just, you talking about those people, you know, those rebels, you know, they're like loaded up with a bunch of guns everywhere. You know, even that movie like City of God, I think it came, you know, I think that movie was about Rio de Janeiro or something like that. Some poor country. They had guns everywhere. So basically what I'm saying is that guns is a reality for modern day living. And the movies, they're representing what's going on right now, unless they purposefully decide to date back a movie back in ancient times, and then they'll mimic what happened back in ancient times. So martial arts, without guns in particular, becomes very, very irrelevant for movie making.